It's a very important audience here for the message of the book that you will be receiving called Renewing the Struggles for Social Justice, a Primer for Transformative Leaders. So it's a particular delight to be here and appreciate your asking me to do this. And I do want to extend the greetings of James Joseph, the former ambassador to South Africa from 1996 to 2000. He was the only U.S. plenipotentiary to South Africa who was privileged to present his credentials to President Nelson Mandela. And it's a matter of record that he established a stellar reputation for speaking eloquently and effectively for American and for South African interests. So much so that President Clinton once remarked publicly and with tongue firmly in cheek that he sometimes wasn't sure whether the ambassador was the United States ambassador to South Africa or the South African ambassador to the United States. As a former businessman, the ambassador took a very strong interest, and still does, in the advancement of the South African economy. As a former leader in this country's not-for-profit sector, he was concerned that South Africa would nurture its own civil society institutions. And as a civil rights leader in the 1950s and 60s, he has been most hopeful that post-apartheid economic development would serve all South African citizens equitably. Now let me introduce Renewing Struggles for Social Justice. I want to begin by asking each of you to play a mind game, if you will. Assume that you have been appointed to a high-level commission in your country, whether it's South Africa, the United States, or some other country, that is charged with setting the rules for how the resources and benefits of your nation should be distributed so every member of the society, from the fourth generation onward, your great-grandchildren and mine and their heirs, will have a fair chance at realizing his or her potential for leading a decent, healthy, and productive life. To play this game meaningfully, that is, to produce rules that have a chance to work, it's critical to bear in mind that none of us can know, much less ensure, what the life circumstances, physically, mentally, economically, and socially, will be for any of our great-grandchildren. All we can hope to do is make sure that the rules do not discriminate unfairly against any of our collective heirs. So how would you work to ensure to each of your heirs a quality public education, sound public infrastructure, water, sewage, bridges, parks, and all the other things that we depend upon, a decent, affordable housing, safe and nurturing communities, living wage employment, the capacity and the opportunity to build assets, proper health care across life, and equal and fair protection under the law. My point is that Renewing Struggles is premised on two hopes. First, that each of you will actually spend some time at that mind game, and then act on your conclusions. And second, that you do so in your capacity as a citizen. I want you to consider the idea that your duties as a citizen concerned for the broader public good precede your very and obviously consequential responsibilities as business executives. As citizens of constitutional democracies, we are called upon always to monitor, re-examine, and on occasion, reset the rules by which we live together. Regular elections, in fact, are examples of that. Societal rule setting goes on all the time, in fact, usually only by a small, not terribly representative number of folks at the top, but from time to time by the many. All of us, of course, have become exceedingly, and might I say, excruciatingly familiar with the need for rule setting in the wake of the global economy's near-death experience over the last few weeks. South Africa, of course, undertook an even more basic and comprehensive rule-setting exercise just 18 years ago. Indeed, if we look at the constitutional trajectories of South Africa since the 1940s, and of the United States at least since our Civil War, we can, and in Renewing Struggles we do, mark how citizens engaged in the civil rights and anti-apartheid movements have struggled with stunning, though still partial success, to bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice. Now, this sort of citizen rule setting to achieve social justice requires us consciously to put aside, as far as humanly possible, the quest for our own and our heirs' personal advantage. That's the only way we can be clear-headed about the broader common good upon which, in turn, our personal freedoms and well-being depend. For me, this comes down to the duty to serve what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our natures, and to adhere to the universally acknowledged golden rule of reciprocity, to do unto others what you'd have them do unto you. That's the grand theme of Renewing Struggles. In its several parts, we have tried to develop a convincing call to action to all leaders in both countries. Indeed, we conceive of this relatively short book, it's only about 80 pages long, as an extended letter to our readers. And though we've prized brevity, we've also attempted to achieve large goals. We take on what we consider the increasingly cramped definitions of the public good, led in the main by free market advocates, and the nasty consequences to social coherence that the resulting policies at national and international levels have either produced or reinforced. Wholesale deregulation, I would submit, has meant that our notions of fairness have become observed more often in the breach than not. We examine the role of race as the determining factor in how the rules for the distribution of our two nations' resources actually work. We suggest what norms, forms, and places citizens can best rely on to collectively renegotiate society's rule for distribution and for the common good. We offer a definition of the kind of leadership that each of us should cultivate in ourselves and others, and it's related very closely to Ubuntu, in order to build more just societies. We talk of effective leadership as a way of being, practiced by people whose first goal is to empower others for their development and for the common good. We insist that every person has the germ of leadership within, and that arguably the most dangerous threat to effective leadership is our personal delusions of adequacy. The idea is that I, really, almost always, know what's best, and am the central actor in every scene I play in. We suggest the importance of pursuing justice that is both restorative, that is, reaffirms and supports the humanity of each of us, and transformative, that is, reconstructs our social and economic orders so that the least among us has a fair chance. We argue the necessity to support the self-help efforts of citizens in low-income communities, and to do so in ways that are respectful of their knowledge and abilities. And we describe what you, as the individual citizen leader, can do to apply your unique leadership skills and resources to help bend the moral arc towards justice. Let me conclude with the thought that business women and men, the corporate sector generally, surely have much more to lose in conditions of social disintegration and much more to gain from the steady growth of social justice and equity when more and more people are brought into the mainstream of our economies. Renewing Struggles does not underestimate or denigrate the importance of market institutions. They are critical drivers of economic well-being. Both the Ambassador Joseph's and my own experiences in major international corporations, Cummins Engine for his part, and as you've heard, British Petroleum for mine, understand that firsthand. We know that business people and businesses themselves have a direct stake in advancing social goals and social justice. The strength of the transformation commitments of South African businesses is an apt case in point. In sum, I'm asking you to take a couple or 3 hours to read Renewing Struggles, test our themes, give us some feedback, and push this evening's mind game a bit further, and to challenge yourself with a question. Am I part of the problem or a player in efforts to overcome the drag of social injustice on the common good of my nation? And if you end up agreeing largely with us, then address one further question. How can I not act? Thank you.